My mom mocked me for being single and childless at Christmas, so I brought my new fiancé and she recognized him a little too well. Guys, this whole story feels like a fever dream wrapped in a Maury episode with a side of emotional whiplash. And honestly, I'm still somewhere between laughing out of shock and rage crying into my leftover Christmas cookies. But let's rewind. So I'm 32. Single for a while, not by choice, just life. I had 2 serious relationships in my 20s, both of which turned out to be colossal wastes of time. One cheated, the other disappeared mid-mortgage conversation like I was a Craigslist scam. You'd think my mom would have been like supportive or whatever, but nope. She's the kind of woman who treats your relationship status like a badge of honor or a scarlet letter. And if you don't have kids by 30, you're basically a failed experiment in her book. Which brings us to last Christmas. So we do this annual family gathering, right? Every Christmas Eve, same house, same people, same potluck rules that no one actually follows. I show up, solo again, with my little Tupperware of baked mac and cheese that nobody touches because Aunt Carla always brings hers in a fancy ceramic dish and somehow that makes it better. Anyway, everyone's doing the whole hug, wine pour, pretend to be nice thing, and then my mom starts her little show. Like she always does. She stands there with her wine glass in front of the tree like it's her TED Talk moment. She goes, "We're just so blessed to have such a full family this year, so many new little ones joining us soon." She smiles right at my cousin Jenna, who's 6 months pregnant and glowing like a Christmas bulb. And then she turns to me, swear on my houseplants, and goes, "And of course we've got our free spirit here. No man, no kids, just vibes. Our modern woman." Y'all, I literally choked on my gingerbread cookie. Like, ma'am, what was that? It wasn't even the words. It was the tone. That smug, backhanded compliment energy she does so well. Everyone laughed in that awkward way people do when they know something's not okay but they don't want to be the one to say it. My dad tried to redirect. He was like, "Let's do presents soon," but it was already out there. And I stood there like, why am I here? Why do I even try? Afterward, I went outside just to breathe. It was snowing, one of those light, quiet snows that makes everything feel still. And I just sat on the porch steps watching the flakes land on my boots thinking, next year I'm not doing this. I'm not showing up just to be the family punchline. But here's the thing. The universe, she was clearly listening. 'Cause 2 weeks later, this man walks into my life. And not just any man. No, this man was tall, charming, smelled like cedar and black coffee, and had this way of making eye contact that made you feel like the only person in the room. He was like a walking Taylor Swift bridge. Mysterious, magnetic, maybe slightly emotionally unavailable, but in a way that made you want to dig deeper. We met at a bookstore. I know it sounds fake, but I was in the true crime section, judge me later, and he was looking for a gift for his sister. He asked for a recommendation, I gave him one, and then somehow we ended up talking about our favorite documentaries, our worst Tinder dates, and the weirdest family traditions we had growing up. His name's Daniel. And over the next few months, Daniel became my person. He made me feel seen. Like actually seen. We'd cook dinner together, sit on the floor eating pizza straight out of the box, talk about our childhoods, our dreams, our fears. And yeah, okay, there were a few things he was weirdly private about. Like, he didn't talk much about his family. Said it was complicated. But I didn't push. I figured we all have our pasts. Fast forward to November. Things are good. Like suspiciously good. I'm falling for him hard. And one night we're watching Love Actually. Don't judge me, and out of nowhere he turns to me and goes, "I've never done Christmas with someone before. Would you want to change that this year?" And I melted. I was like, hold on. With my family? And he was like, yeah, if that's okay. I want to meet the people who raised the woman I'm crazy about. I swear, I stared at him for a full minute like he just asked me to marry him on live TV. And obviously I said yes. Because in my head I'm thinking, this is perfect. This is poetic. 1 year ago, I got publicly roasted for being single and childless. This year, I'm showing up with my charming, attentive, handsome man who actually wants to spend Christmas with me. And maybe this would be the year my mom shuts her mouth. Plot twist incoming. 'Cause nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what actually happened. Before I get deeper into this, I'd love to know what city, state, or country you're watching from today. Drop it in the comments below. And if stories about finding your voice and standing your ground speak to you, hit that like button and consider subscribing so you never miss the next one. Thank you, and let's keep going. So, it's December 24th again. 1 year after the gingerbread cookie humiliation. I'm in my car outside my mom's house with Daniel, wearing my new cranberry-colored sweater dress, doing last-minute deep breathing like I'm about to walk into a courtroom. Daniel squeezes my hand and goes, "You okay?" And I'm like, yeah, I just want this to go well. What I didn't say is that I was praying my mom didn't pull another festive roast in front of the family, and that bringing a +1 wasn't going to backfire. 'Cause she can be real performative. You never know if you're getting Martha Stewart or Regina George in pearls. Daniel, for his part, looked stunning. Dark green coat, scarf, perfectly disheveled hair. He brought a bottle of wine and homemade tiramisu like he was trying to win son-in-law of the year. My man did homework. I told him my mom loved layered desserts and boom, tiramisu from scratch. We walk up. Door opens. Aunt Carla greets us first and immediately goes, "Oh, finally bringing someone home, huh?" Cue mild, awkward laughter. Then, my mom walks into the foyer. And y'all, this woman froze. Like actually froze. She was in the middle of adjusting her necklace or something, but when she saw Daniel, her face legit went pale. She blinked twice like she was glitching. Like her brain needed a system reboot. I looked at her like, Mom? Daniel stepped forward, holding out the wine and tiramisu and being all, "It's so nice to finally meet you. Merry Christmas." She didn't respond right away. She stared at him for a good 3 seconds, mouth slightly open, then snapped out of it like, "Yes, hello, Merry Christmas. Come in." But the vibe was weird. Instantly weird. You know how moms can do that thing where their voice stays polite but everything else about them is screaming? Yeah, that. She smiled too hard, blinked too fast, did that fake laugh thing that sounds like someone trying to mimic joy but failing. Daniel didn't seem to notice. He was busy charming my cousins and laughing with Uncle Bill. But me, I was watching her. She kept glancing at him, then at me, then away, like she was trying to figure something out, and I thought maybe she was just surprised. Maybe she didn't expect me to show up with someone like Daniel, someone confident, successful, borderline GQ cover-worthy, someone who didn't shrink in family settings. But it wasn't just surprise, it was familiarity, like she'd seen him before, like something was clicking but she didn't want it to. Cut to dinner. We're all seated around the table. Daniel's telling some story about getting lost in Venice on a solo trip and my entire family is eating it up. Even Grandpa laughed. And he hasn't smiled at a holiday meal since the Bush administration. But my mom? She was pushing her peas around like they wronged her. I tried to check in, quietly leaned over and said, "Hey, you okay?" She looked up and went, "I'm fine. But not in the fine kind of fine. You know the one. The one that means we'll talk about this in the car and you're not gonna like it." She got up right after dessert, didn't even try Daniel's tiramisu by the way, and this woman once cried over soggy banana pudding. She disappeared into the kitchen and after 10 minutes I followed her. And there she was, standing by the sink, not moving, not washing dishes, just staring at the window like it held the answers to the universe. I go, "Mom, what's going on? Are you upset?" She doesn't look at me, just says, "Where did you meet him?" "Who, Daniel?" "Yes." Me slightly weirded out. "At a bookstore." "Why?" Silence. Then she turns and looks me in the face and goes, "Did he ever mention living in Seattle? Even just briefly?" And I froze. 'Cause yeah, Daniel had mentioned a few years in Seattle. Something about a tech startup and a bad breakup. But he'd always kept it vague, said it was a dark chapter and he didn't like talking about it. I was like, "Okay, you're seriously freaking me out. What is going on?" She didn't answer, just whispered, "I think I know him." And then she left. Left me in the kitchen with my heart in my throat and my stomach doing gymnastics. 'Cause what the F was that? We drive home that night, Daniel and I, and the whole way I'm like, okay, maybe she's confusing him with someone else. People have doppelgangers, right? Maybe Daniel just looks like some old coworker of hers or whatever. Except I couldn't shake it. The way she looked at him. It was like recognition and something darker. And that night, lying in bed while Daniel slept next to me, I scrolled through my mom's old Facebook photos. Just out of curiosity. Just to prove to myself I was just being dramatic. And I found one. So I'm lying there in the dark next to Daniel and I'm doing the one thing everyone says not to do, deep diving my mom's Facebook. Her photo albums go way back. She's got stuff posted from when I was in high school, even old throwbacks from before I was born. My mom's a sentimental hoarder when it comes to pictures. If someone once said hi to her at a farmer's market in 1992, she probably posted about it. And then I find it. Album, Seattle trip, 2015. Okay, that's 8 years ago. I click through. It's a bunch of scenic views, Pike Place Market, a pic of her holding a latte. Harmless, right? Until I get to photo number 17. And I stop breathing. It's my mom, sitting at an outdoor cafe, leaning in close to a man. A man with broad shoulders, a sharp jawline, warm brown eyes. It's Daniel. Not a lookalike. Not a cousin. Not a glitch in the Matrix. It's actually him. He's a little younger in the photo. No beard yet. Hair's a bit shorter, but it's him. I would have recognized that smirk anywhere. I zoom in like it's going to change something, like maybe it's his twin or a really good AI filter. But no, it's just straight up my boyfriend sitting with my mom, smiling like they've known each other for years. And I felt like I got kicked in the throat. I stared at that picture for a solid 5 minutes, trying to process, trying to think of any version of this that made sense. Was he an old friend of hers? A random guy she met on a trip? Someone she dated? Like, what was I even looking at? Eventually, I nudged him awake. "Hey," I whispered, trying to keep my voice calm. "Babe, I need to ask you something." He sat up groggy. "What's wrong?" I turned my phone toward him, held up the photo, and said the 3 words no boyfriend ever wants to hear. "Is this you?" His eyes adjusted. He leaned in closer and his entire expression changed. His face dropped. He blinked, looked at me, looked back at the photo, then back at me, and all he said was, "Oh no. Oh no? That's what he went with?" I sat straight up. "You need to explain. Right now." He ran a hand down his face, stayed quiet for a second, then said, "It's not what you think. I swear. I didn't know until tonight that she was your mom." "Excuse me?" He went on. "We went out a few times. Years ago. I was living in Seattle, she was visiting. We met through some artsy wine tasting thing. It was casual, we grabbed coffee, had dinner twice. That's it. Nothing serious." I was silent, because I didn't even know what to feel yet. And then I asked the next question, the one that honestly scared me. Did you sleep with her? He hesitated. That pause was loud enough to crack glass. Finally, he said, once. One word, one syllable, and suddenly I felt like my entire relationship had flipped inside out. So, to recap, my boyfriend, who I adore, who I just brought home for Christmas, who I thought was going to be my fiancé by New Year's, casually hooked up with my mother 8 years ago on some random trip and somehow never thought to mention it? Y'all, my ancestors were screaming in my ear. I got out of bed, I couldn't even be near him. I went to the living room and just sat there in my robe, shaking. Like, what are the odds? What kind of twisted Hallmark meets Maury plot is this? He followed me in, tried to explain. I swear, I didn't recognize her. She looked different. It was so long ago, and you don't exactly go around showing me pictures of your mom from 2015. I couldn't even look at him. I said, but you knew she was familiar tonight. I saw your face. He nodded. Yeah, when she opened the door, I felt it. I thought she looked like someone I'd met, but I didn't put it together until dessert. And by then, I didn't know what to say. And here's the worst part. Kind of believed him. I didn't want to. I wanted to flip a table and throw his hoodie out the window. But deep down I believed him. 'Cause his face wasn't smug. It wasn't guilty, it was terrified. Like someone who just found out they'd been cast in a true crime doc against their will. But I still couldn't wrap my head around it. Like, how do you move forward from this? How do you date someone who's literally been intimate with your own mother? There was no Pinterest board for this situation. No Reddit thread that could prepare me. Just me on my couch, feeling like the butt of a cosmic joke. And it was about to get worse. 'Cause the next day, my mom showed up at my apartment, and she had some things to say. So it's the morning after the worst Christmas Eve of my entire life. Daniel's sleeping in the guest room because, yeah, I made him move. I couldn't even handle him being near me. I barely slept. I just kept going in circles, pacing my living room, trying to figure out what the F just happened to my life. And then at 9:04 a.m., yes, I checked, there's a knock at the door. I open it, and there she is. My mother, wearing her Christmas scarf, sunglasses even though it's cloudy, and holding a travel mug like she's about to lead a prayer circle. I say, Mom? She goes, we need to talk. I'm too tired to argue, so I step aside and let her in. She walks in like it's her place, like she owns the air in my living room, and immediately starts scanning like she's looking for something. Or someone. You're alone, she asks. Daniel's in the guest room, I say flatly. She nods, takes off her coat, sits on the edge of my couch like she's not the reason I'm emotionally wrecked right now. And then she goes, I see you found the photo. I sit down across from her. So we're not pretending anymore? She leans in and drops the real bomb. I knew who he was the second I saw that photo you posted last week. Silence. She looks in my eyes. The photo of you two at the Christmas market. You posted it on Instagram. Oh my gosh. I didn't want to say anything. I thought, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But then he showed up at the door and I knew. So, you let me bring him to dinner? She shrugs. I didn't want to embarrass you. I almost lost it. Embarrass me? She literally embarrassed me last year in front of everyone just for not having a date. And now she wants credit for not humiliating me again? I stare at her. How do you not recognize someone you've hooked up with? She gives me this look. It was almost a decade ago. I was in a weird place. You were finishing college, your dad and I were fighting a lot, I was drinking more wine than I should have been. I went on that trip to Seattle to reconnect with myself and I met him. At a gallery. Course it was a gallery. She goes on, we went on 2 dates. One night, he invited me back to his place. It was fine. Nothing amazing. The next day I flew home. End of story. I just sat there silent. 'Cause like, what do you even say to that? My mom slept with my boyfriend. Before I knew him. Before he knew me. But still, it's my mother. And the man I brought to Christmas. And the same man I thought might propose in a month. I say, you could have warned me. Told me something. Anything. She crosses her arms. I wasn't sure how. And frankly, it's not my responsibility anymore. You're a grown woman. You're allowed to make your own decisions. I couldn't believe her. I said, you knew who he was and you just sat there through dinner pretending like nothing happened? And she goes, well, it's not like he's my boyfriend now. That did it. That was the sentence that broke my brain. I stood up. Okay, you need to leave. Sweetheart. No, don't sweetheart me right now. You came into my house, knowing full well what you were hiding, and now you're trying to act like you were the victim of awkward timing? She stood too. I'm just saying, maybe this is a sign. Maybe this relationship wasn't meant to be. I swear I saw red. Because you were part of his past? You think that gives you the right to call the shots in my present? She grabbed her coat, all huffy now. I'm just looking out for you. No, you're not. You're looking out for your image. You didn't care last year when you mocked me in front of everyone. You only care now because this makes you uncomfortable. She didn't respond. Just walked to the door, paused, looked at me and said, just think about what kind of man he is if he'd date the daughter of someone he already slept with. And then she left. Like she just dropped a mic and walked off stage. And you know what? That hurt. Not because she was necessarily wrong, but because she knew how to cut deep. I sat there for a long time after that. Like hours. Replaying every moment with Daniel. Every little hesitation. Every time he dodged questions about his past. Every time he said his family was complicated. And I thought, maybe she's right. Maybe this is too much. Maybe this is a sign. But then the guest room door opened and Daniel stepped out. Eyes red, hoodie on, silent. And what he said next changed everything. So picture this. I'm still sitting on the couch, wrapped in a throw blanket like it's emotional armor, when Daniel comes out of the guest room. I say, "You heard that, didn't you?" He nods. I ask, "Is it true? Did you know before she opened the door?" He sighs, walks over slowly, sits down on the other end of the couch. Then he says, "The second I saw her face at the door, something hit me, and I panicked." I let that sit. 'Cause yeah, I saw the panic. The way he blinked. The slight tension in his shoulders. The way his voice got an octave higher when he greeted her. It wasn't nothing, I just didn't know how deep it ran. He goes on. "I didn't want to say anything that night because I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't want to ruin Christmas for you," I said. "But you ruined it anyway." Just slowly. He nodded again. "I know." Then he looks at me and says, "I wasn't lying when I said it was a brief thing. Your mom and I, we barely knew each other. We had dinner, we had some wine, and yeah, we hooked up. But it wasn't emotional. It wasn't deep. I didn't even know her last name." Cross my arms. "You didn't recognize her? At all?" "I recognized her face," he admits. "But not who she was to you. Not until I saw her hugging your aunt and calling your dad by name. Then it hit me like a truck." And then he said something that completely threw me. I almost left. That night, when I went to the bathroom after dessert, I was going to sneak out, call a car, make up an emergency. Just leave. I blinked. "So why didn't you?" He looked me in the eyes and said, "Because I didn't want to be a coward. 'Cause I care about you. And I didn't want you to think I bailed for no reason. I figured I'd talk to you later when it wasn't a full-on holiday circus. And here's the thing. Part of me got that. Like, yeah, okay. It was a terrible situation. And if I had been in his shoes, honestly, I don't know what I would have done either. Maybe I would have bailed. Maybe I'd be halfway across the country by now, hiding in a Waffle House. But still, I needed more than, it wasn't serious." So I said it again. "Why didn't you ever tell me you slept with someone older? Someone random from a trip? Something even close to this?" And then he finally dropped his own bombshell. "Because I have a lot of stuff from my past that I've been trying to leave behind." He looked down at his hands, picked at a thread in his sleeve. "That Seattle trip? It was right after my dad passed. I was spiraling, drinking too much, sleeping around, making reckless choices. I was depressed and I didn't even know it. I was basically a walking red flag." He paused, took a breath. "That's why I moved. Why I changed careers. Why I don't talk much about that chapter of my life. I'm not that guy anymore." That's when it clicked for me. This whole time, all the little things I brushed off, they made sense now. How he avoided talking about exes. How he tensed up when we watched movies that dealt with grief. How he sometimes stared into space when certain songs came on the radio. I thought it was just moodiness or introversion. But no, it was pain. Deep, unresolved, heavy pain. I looked at him, and for the first time since all this started, I didn't just see the guy who once slept with my mom. I saw someone who'd made mistakes. Who'd lived through some really ugly moments. Who'd worked hard to come out the other side. But still, that didn't make it easy. So I said, "Okay, but now what?" 'Cause no matter how innocent it was, you and my mom have a past. And I don't know how to live with that. He didn't try to argue. Didn't beg or plead or go into movie monologue mode. He just nodded and said, "Then I'll give you space. However long you need. And if, at the end of that space, you still want me in your life, I'll be here. And if not, I'll still respect you." And then he went to the guest room, packed up quietly, and left. I just sat there for hours, trying to figure out whether I had just lost the love of my life or dodged a very complicated bullet. So it's been 2 days since Christmas. Daniel's gone. My mom's gone quiet. I've been ghosting everyone, barely answering texts and just existing. Living off leftover cookies and takeout, watching episodes of Dead to Me on loop like it's going to give me some emotional blueprint for how to survive this. My brain keeps running in circles. Like, if they didn't know about each other, does it still count as betrayal? If it wasn't technically cheating, then what is it? Is it just emotional landmine territory? Unfixable weirdness? Or is it forgivable? And I keep thinking, if someone else told me this story, a friend or a Reddit stranger, what would I say? And the truth is, I didn't know. Because this wasn't black and white. This was beige. This was confusing. This was messy human reality. And then, out of nowhere, I get a text from Aunt Carla. You know, fancy mac and cheese aunt? She writes, "Hey sweetheart, hope you're okay. I wanted to talk to you about Christmas Eve. Something happened that I didn't want to bring up in front of everyone. Can I call you?" I was like, oh boy, here we go. Another twist, another family bombshell about to drop on my emotionally exhausted head. But I call her anyway. And the second she picks up, she goes, "So I know what happened. Your mom told me." I brace myself. Then she says, and I just need to say, I think she's projecting. Big time. I say, "Projecting what exactly?" And Carla sighs like she's been waiting to say this for years. "Your mom's not mad about Daniel. She's mad about herself, and this whole situation just gave her an excuse to spiral. Apparently, and I had no idea about this, my mom's always had this underlying guilt about the person she became in her early 40s. When she went to Seattle, when her marriage hit a rough patch, when she started drinking more and making impulsive decisions, and sleeping with Daniel, that wasn't a quirky travel anecdote. It was one of her personal low points. Aunt Carla goes, "She's always been terrified of you repeating her mistakes. It's part of why she's so intense about your relationships. Why she mocked you last year. It's not judgment, it's fear." I sat there with the phone pressed to my cheek, just stunned, because that actually made so much sense. She's scared of me becoming a version of her that she regrets, of losing control over how I turn out, Carla continued. And honestly, I think she freaked out when she saw Daniel because it reminded her that her past still exists, that she can't bury it. You brought him home and it felt like her old choices were walking in the front door wearing a bow tie. I swear that visual made me laugh, because she wasn't wrong. It wasn't just about me dating Daniel, it was about her being reminded that she's not the polished, flawless matriarch she wants people to see. She has scars, and mine just accidentally overlapped with hers. Then Carla goes, "Now, I'm not saying you should get back together with him, that's your decision, but don't let this become a punishment for either of you. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen, it just means not letting it control you." That hit different, because she wasn't wrong. I'd been so focused on the shock of what happened, I hadn't even thought about what I actually wanted. I was just in survival mode, pushing everything away. So I asked myself, do I still love him? Yeah, I do. Do I trust him? That was harder. But maybe trust isn't always about the absence of mess. Maybe it's about how people handle the mess when it shows up. And Daniel? He didn't lie. He didn't gaslight me. He owned it, stepped back and gave me space. And I realized that's more than a lot of people would have done. So I picked up my phone and texted him. Just one line. "Want talk?" He replied 5 minutes later. "Anytime." And just like that, a day later, we met at this quiet little coffee place downtown. You know the kind, mismatched mugs, indie music on loop, and old couches that feel like they've absorbed 1,000 breakups and emotional breakthroughs. I got there first. Ordered peppermint tea even though I hate peppermint tea because apparently emotional tension turns me into a seasonal basic. He walked in about 5 minutes later. Same coat, same scarf, same face that made my stomach twist in ways I couldn't even define anymore. And the second he sat down, we both just looked at each other. No smiles, no forced small talk. Just eye contact and silence. Then I broke it. "So, do you still think there's a version of this where we work?" He exhaled hard, like he'd been holding that breath for days. "Yes, I do, but only if you want that too." And I said, "I don't know what I want, 'cause honestly, I didn't. I wasn't there to patch things up with a fairy tale kiss and a montage. I was there to face it, to put everything on the table and figure out whether it could even be rebuilt. So I asked the real stuff. Did you think about telling me earlier?" "Yes," he said, "but I kept talking myself out of it. I thought it would just ruin everything. And I didn't want to ruin you." I raised an eyebrow. "You don't get to decide that." "I know," he said, "and that was a mistake." Then I asked, "Are there any other mystery exes in my extended family you forgot to mention?" He actually laughed, like a real tired laugh. "No, just the one. Hopefully the last." We got quiet again. I could tell he wanted to say more, and eventually he did. I keep replaying that week in my head, the meeting her in Seattle, thinking it was just a fling, and now realizing that one careless decision got wrapped up in the best thing that's happened to me in years. That hit, 'cause he wasn't just talking about sleeping with my mom, he was talking about not thinking, about living like his actions didn't have ripple effects, about being someone who didn't imagine consequences beyond the moment. He looked at me and said, "I want to be better than I was back then, and I want to be someone who can face uncomfortable stuff with you, not hide from it." I asked him point blank, "So what does that mean going forward?" And he said, "It means if we're together, I'm going to therapy, 'cause I want to understand why I've avoided the parts of my past that matter, why I've shut down, why I didn't tell you what I should have told you." That right there, that's not flowers or big romantic gestures. That's growth. That's someone saying, "I know I messed up, and I'm not just sorry, I'm doing something about it." And that hit me harder than any apology ever could. I told him, "I'm not ready to just go back to normal." He nodded. "That's okay. We can make a new normal, or no normal at all. I'll respect whatever you need." Then I said, "You might have to deal with awkward Thanksgivings for the rest of your life if we do stay together." He winced. "I'll bring extra pie." And we both laughed for the first time in days. And then we sat there as two people who'd walked through the fire and didn't flinch from looking each other in the eye. And I realized, maybe love isn't about perfect timing or clean stories. Maybe it's about choosing each other in the mess. Every time. So after my coffee with Daniel, I needed closure from the other half of this equation. That meant my mother. And let me just say, I had no idea how this conversation was going to go. I mean, this woman could turn on me, get defensive, cry, gaslight me, or suddenly act like she was the victim in all this. None of it would surprise me. But I needed to do it. For myself. So I called her. She answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting. I told her I wanted to talk, in person. No interruptions. Just us. We met the next day at her house. Not the big family dinner vibe, just the two of us sitting at the kitchen table where she used to braid my hair before school and lecture me about wearing enough SPF. I sat down. She poured tea like we were about to talk about the weather. Then she said, "You saw Daniel?" I nodded. We talked. Everything came out. She looked tense, bracing herself. I took a deep breath. "I'm not mad that you slept with him. I'm uncomfortable, yeah, confused. But mad? Not really. You didn't know he'd become part of my life. You didn't plan this." She stayed quiet, watching me. I continued. "But I am mad that you kept it from me once you figured it out, that you judged me while holding on to your own secrets, that you made me feel like I was the embarrassment." She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand. "Let me finish." She closed her lips. "I spent years thinking you looked down on me for being single, for not having kids yet, for not being a carbon copy of your life. I thought you pitied me. But now I realize maybe you were just ashamed of your own choices and I was too close a mirror." She blinked. That one hit. Then she said softly, "You're right. Okay, that I didn't expect." "I was ashamed," she admitted. "I spent a lot of my life performing, making sure everyone saw the perfect version of me. I married young, raised a family, hosted every holiday, and still felt empty. That Seattle trip was me trying to remember who I was before I became a mom, before I became this polished shell." She looked up at me. "I wasn't proud of what I did. I never meant for it to bleed into your world." I nodded. "But it did." She nodded back. "I know, and I'm sorry." We sat there for a minute. No more accusations. Just two women facing the mess they inherited and created. Then she asked, "So what now? Are you staying with him?" And that's when I realized how much growth had happened in me. Because I didn't hesitate. "I'm giving it a real shot. We're taking it slow. But yeah, I love him." She looked away. I couldn't tell if she was cringing or processing or both. Then she said, "I hope he doesn't hurt you. Not because of what happened with me, but because you deserve more than second-guessing your worth." That was the first time in years she'd said something to me that felt like love instead of control. We cleaned up our mugs. Hugged awkwardly. The kind of hug where your hands pat each other's backs like you're not quite sure how close is too close. And as I walked out the front door, I felt lighter. And for once, not as a daughter who didn't measure up, but as a full-grown woman who handled her own chaos like an adult. So it's been about 6 weeks since the Christmas chaos, as Daniel jokingly calls it. And honestly, things are good. Not perfect, but real. We've been taking things slow, for real this time. We're not rushing back into couple mode like nothing happened. We've had a lot of long talks. Some light arguments. A couple nights apart just to process in our own space. And through all of it, he's shown up. Therapy? He started going the week after we talked. Even offered to go together sometime if I wanted. And that blew me away because that's not something I asked for. That's just who he's choosing to become now. We've even joked about the elephant in the room. Like literally. He calls it the Seattle incident, and every now and then, if we're watching a show where some wild relationship twist happens, he'll lean over and whisper, "Still not the weirdest thing you've forgiven me for." And somehow it makes me laugh. I never thought I'd be able to laugh about this. But I think that's how healing starts. You find a way to take back the power from the parts of your life that almost broke you. You don't erase them, you just stop letting them define the whole story. As for my mom, things are still delicate. We're not suddenly besties baking cookies together or doing matching spa days. But there's a shift. A softness. She called me last week just to ask how I was feeling. No agenda, no passive-aggressive shade. Just checking in. And that might seem small to some people, but for us, that's huge. She's working on her stuff, I'm working on mine. And for once, it doesn't feel like we're playing tug-of-war with who's right. So yeah, that's how I spent my holidays. Do I wish it had played out differently? Of course. Do I still get hit with random flashbacks like, wow, my boyfriend slept with my mother and now we're deciding what to order on Uber Eats together? Yup, sure do. But here's the thing. Life isn't about avoiding all the weird, awful, unexpected plot twists. It's about what you do after them. Do you run, hide, shut down? Or do you sit with the awkward, laugh through the cringe, and ask the really hard questions that might just lead you somewhere better? I chose to stay, to talk, to heal. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far and liked the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment if you've ever had a holiday spiral half this messy. Would you have stayed with him? Or packed up and changed your name? I'll be in the comments reading every dramatic opinion while sipping tea I don't even like. We're stronger when we share. See you in the next diary entry. Take care.